Hey, what's going on? This is Caleb Ward, and in this After Effects tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create this cool galaxy effect in After Effects. Now, the cool part about using the technique outlined in this tutorial is that it doesn't use third-party plugins, so you don't need Trapcode Particular, Element 3D, no, none of that stuff. We're going to only use After Effects and our creativity to create this cool scene. All right, so as you can see, there are a lot of different things going on. You have a lot of color variations. We've got some blues out here, some deep reds and some yellows. We have some stars in the background that are kind of multiple dimensions. You know, some of them are a little bit bigger than the other ones. We also have these cool light flares kind of coming up from the center here. And then there's also this really cool parallaxing effect where the galaxy and the stars don't exactly move at the same rate, so it makes them look like they're kind of further in Z space from each other. And so this tutorial is going to cover how to do all of those things, but before we get going any further, I want to encourage you to go download the free project file over on my website, VFX City. You'll find a link in the description of this video, and of course, the project file is free. So let's hop in. I'm gonna go in and delete everything. And I know that's kind of a heartbreaker, but we are going to create it from scratch. So go ahead and go up to Composition, New Composition. We'll make this 1920 by 1080, square pixels, 24 frames per second, and the duration we'll do 5 seconds long and 0 frames. Hit OK. And the first thing we're gonna do is create a background solid. So you can hit Command Y or Control Y on a PC. And we're just going to select black here, and we're going to name it BG for background and hit OK. So the next thing we're going to do is create the stars. So go ahead and hit Command Y to create a new solid. We'll call this Stars 1, and we'll make the color white. Hit OK and OK. So go to your effects browser and type in CC Star, and you'll see the CC Star Burst effect. Go ahead and drag that onto the white layer. And you can see here that, these stars are pretty big. So instead, we are going to turn down the size quite a bit. Let's say to about, we'll say 30%. And go ahead and change the speed to 0. So that basically just freezes the stars. And we'll go ahead and turn the stars one layer to 3D. So just go ahead and select this 3D checkbox right here. And hit P for position, and we're going to just dial up this Z position here. So just go ahead and dial that up. We'll dial it up. In fact, I'll just type it in to about 10,000. So this is really far back in Z space, and then we can hit S for scale and go ahead and just scale up that layer to where it fills up the entire frame. Cool. So go ahead and duplicate this stars one layer, and you can do that by hitting Command D or Control D on a PC. And we'll call this one Stars 2. And for Stars 2, we are just going to change it up a little bit. We are going to turn up the grid spacing a little bit. We'll turn down the size a bit. And then we'll hit P for position. And instead of it being 10,000 pixels deep, we're going to do 5,000. And so what this will do is just create a depth to where, we have stars in the background and stars kind of in the midground. And it's going to really just add a lot of parallaxing into our scene to make it seem like it's actually 3D and not 2.5D, even though it is 2.5D. So go ahead and select that second stars layer and scale it down to where it fills basically the entire frame. We'll go ahead and scale to right about there. Excellent. Okay, so this is looking great, and I think that we're actually going to want to go in and add in a glow effect to both of these layers. So just go to your effects browser, type in glow, and we'll drop the glow effect onto our stars 2 layer here. I'm going to kind of zoom in here, and let me go ahead and solo the layer so we can kind of see what's going on. You can see there's just a little bit of glow applied, and instead of original colors, we're going to change this to A and B, and we'll make the glow red. About like that, to where there's just a slight glow to it. Go ahead and copy that glow and paste it onto the stars 1 layer. And for the stars 1 layer, we are going to actually change the color from red to blue. And we're going to do the same for the color B here. Just like that, and hit OK. So now we have some stars glowing blue and some stars glowing red. And this just kind of adds in a bit of a color dimension to our stars. And I find that this helps add to the believability of the stars in the background. So now's the time you've been waiting for. Now we're going to create the actual galaxy. So to do that, we're going to create a new composition. Go to Composition, New Composition, and for the width here, we could do 1500 by 1500. And we're gonna call this comp Galaxy. And it can be 5 seconds long. The background can be black. We'll hit OK. And let's create a new solid. So hit Command Y, and we'll call this BG for background, and change the color to black. Hit OK and OK. And let's create another new solid here, and we will call this Ring 1. And it can be black, and hit OK. So what we're gonna do is add in a Turbulent Noise effect. You can use Fractal Noise too. They work very, very similarly. So go ahead and drop Turbulent Noise onto your Ring 1 layer. And we're gonna go in here and up this to about, let's say around 300. And we're gonna turn down the brightness. We want it to be a bit darker than bright, about like that. And let's now go in and add in a tint effect. So T-I-N-T, and drop it onto the layer. And we're gonna map our white color to kind of a deeper blue. Really, what we're trying to go for here is the various colors that you see in a galaxy. And so blue tends to be a primary color. And then there's also going to be some yellow, a little bit of purple, and also some dark red dust. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. So now let's go in and add in a sharpen effect. So type in sharpen and drop it onto the layer here. And we're gonna turn up the sharpen amount pretty significantly. We're gonna turn it up to, let's say about 300. And if you kind of zoom in here, you can see, it's sharpened so much that there's a lot of noise here. And that's actually what we're going for. We want there to be a significant amount of noise, because if you take a look at NASA photographs of like galaxies or different celestial bodies, there's always a certain amount of dust and kind of debris in there, and it makes it look just a little more organic. So it's actually okay that it's doing some of these weird noise elements. So now let's go to the effects and presets browser here and type in Twirl. And the Twirl effect is going to be the thing that really brings our galaxy to life. So go ahead and drop it in there, and we can go ahead and turn up the angle here. We'll turn it up to, let's say around 120, about like that. And so you can see here that, we're beginning to see a galaxy, how the arms kind of spiral outwards. And so let's go in now and create a mask. So to do that, all you have to do is hold down your mouse over the mask button here, select the ellipse tool, and then just double click, and it'll create a perfect circle ellipse. And now we can just go to our mask options down here and turn down the expansion to right about there and feather it out. Cool. So as you can see, we are beginning to get a basic galaxy outline here. So from this point on, it's really about customizing this scene to look right for us. So let's go in now, and I'm gonna duplicate this ring. So there's a second ring on top of the ring 1. And the second ring, I'm actually just gonna go in and I'm going to delete the sharpen and the tint. And I'm gonna turn up the contrast pretty significantly. So just go ahead and crank it up to, we'll say, 720. Yeah, that sounds fine. And go to your evolution options and just dial in that random seed to just a random number. Cool, and before we go any further, go ahead and select the top layer here. Hit enter, and we are going to rename this Luma Matte, and click away. And make sure that you toggle the switches button here to where you can see the track matte, and we are going to change it to Luma Matte. Cool, so this really just reduced the amount of grain and galaxy dust introduced into our scene. So now essentially we're going to duplicate this process over and over until we have a galaxy that looks the way that we want it to look. So go ahead and select both of these layers here, hit Command D to duplicate, and we are going to change the random seed on this second ring here, and we can just call this ring 2, or maybe even ring 2 white, so we know what color we're working with here. And you can go now into the random seed here and just dial it up to a random number, and you can change the map white to actually white. And we'll go to Luma Matte here, and we'll change the evolution options to just another random seed. So we'll say about like that. And another thing I can see is, maybe we want the white part to be a little more twisted, so we can turn up the twirl here. And it's really just however you see fit for your composition. We could even go in and turn down the brightness, maybe about like that. It's looking pretty cool. Kind of looks like Sonic the Hedgehog actually, but it's still cool. And let's go in and duplicate these two layers again, hit Command D. And for this one, we'll rename it to, let's say, Ring 3 purple and go up to our composition galaxy here. We'll change the color to obviously just like a deep purple here. We can even go in and let's, turn up the brightness a bit. We'll go into the random seed and change that up a bit. Like that. Go to the Luma Mat, go to the random seed, kind of turn that up. In fact, I'm going to turn up the brightness a bit more so we can kind of see a little bit more of the galaxy underneath. And I actually think that, for this one, I'll go ahead and solo it. I don't want it to be as wide. In fact, I want the center area to be more purple than the outer area. So with our Luma Mat selected, I'm going to go in here to our mask. And I'm just going to dial down the expansion to where it's kind of just in the center area. And now if we kind of deselect the solo, we can see that we have kind of purple in the middle area here. And that's exactly the way that we want it to look. Sweet, so let's duplicate this again. So select both of the layers on top, hit Command D, and we'll call this new layer, we'll call it like a nucleus. Because, it's like a nucleus, like on a cell. And we can go in now and let's change the white to like a bright yellow. So this is going to be the kind of the burning core where all the other stars are. We'll hit OK and let's go in now and we're going to turn up the brightness so that we can kind of really see the center here. And obviously we'll go in, change up the random seed again. We'll change up the random seed on the nucleus here, kind of dial it in, to where we're just getting a new look. And I think this is looking pretty cool. So one thing before we go any further, I'm going to go ahead and select all of our ring layers here, including the nucleus, and we're going to change it to add. So they're adding colors on top of each other. And you can see here that in doing that, we are adding a lot of color complexity into our scene, which helps to just sell the overall effect. Excellent. So let's duplicate this nucleus one more time and hit Command D. And for this new nucleus, I'm going to select the Luma Mat, the layer on top. And we'll go ahead and turn down the expansion just a little bit more to where, it's more of the center area. In fact, I'll go ahead and solo this so we can kind of see what's going on. We just want it to be a small kind of nucleus, a burning hot core. And let's go to our nucleus 2 here and we'll turn up the brightness again. It's right about there. And, for this one, we can map the white to a little bit brighter. Maybe it's a little bit closer to white. And we'll go in and change up the random seed. So, just like before, we're going to turn up the random seed and it can be any number you want. And go ahead and deselect that solo there. So you can see we have this like burning hot core right in the middle, just like that. So now it's time to add in the dust into our scene. So go ahead and select your ring 1 and your Luma Mat and hit Command D and drag it to the very top here. And we're going to change the ring 1 name into, let's say, Dust 1. And as long as you have Dust 1 selected, go to Map White 2. And we're going to change this to kind of a deeper red, about like that. Hit OK, and we are going to change our transfer mode to Multiply. So as you can see, this is kind of adding in some dirty dust elements into our scene. And from here, I can see if I zoom in here, this brown is actually really, really dark, and I want it to be a bit brighter, so we can kind of dial this up here. Maybe want it to be a little bit deeper red, about like, let's say about like that. And we can now go in and adjust things like the contrast and the brightness to kind of get this dust exactly where we want it. So I'm going to make sure I have my dust 1 selected. I'm going to turn down the contrast quite a bit and turn up the brightness to where we have just a little bit more red in our scene here. And then we can go in and change things like the random seed. So we'll change the random seed to just a new number. And I'll do the same thing for our Luma Mat here. So we'll change the random seed again. And for the Luma Mat, we'll do the exact same thing as we did before. So we'll kind of, scale down the brightness here to where, the dust is just real slight. And we can even turn down the contrast to where the dust, looks a little more organic in our scene, about like that. Cool. So I'm going to duplicate this dust one more time. Select them both, hit Command D, and we're just going to change the random seed. So that's all we're going to do here. Change the random seed, select the new Luma Mat, and change the random seed. Excellent. So now you can see we have a galaxy, but there's not really any stars in this galaxy. So that's a little weird. So go in and let's duplicate this Luma Matte Ring 1 layer down here, hit Command D, and we'll drag this to the very top. And in fact, I'm gonna go in here and solo this layer so we can see what's going on. And let's go to our effects and presets and type in star and drop over the CC Starburst effect onto that Ring 1 layer here. And in fact, I'm gonna call this stars, and we'll get rid of this tint effect. So we still want it to be black and white, just like that. So now we can go in just like we did before and customize this. So I'm gonna change the size to where they're pretty small. In fact, I'm gonna turn down the grid spacing to where we have more stars kind of in a smaller cluster here. If you kind of zoom in here, you can begin to see just kind of these star trails coming off. And I'm gonna change the speed to 0 so our stars don't move. And if I deselect the solo button here, you can see we have stars in our scene, and we can just kind of go in and customize the size about like that. And we can even go in here to our evolution wheel and just kind of change it up, and go to the Luma Matte in the same way and just kind of change it up to where the stars aren't exactly over the arms here. And so you can go in here and just kind of zoom in, and I'm actually going to change the size of our stars. I think I want the stars to be even smaller. I just want them to be, very low visibility here. And let's go ahead and duplicate the Luma Matte and the stars layer. And I'm gonna go in here and change up the Turbulent Noise evolution options. One more time, we'll change it up here, and then go back to the stars layer, and let's turn up the twirl actually. Let's twirl these stars quite a bit here, about like that. Cool, so this is looking really good. The very last layer I want to add, I'm just gonna hit Command Y to create a new solid. We'll call this center, and let's make this center just bright white. Just white, hit OK and OK. I'm gonna hit T for opacity, turn down the opacity here, and go up to my handy dandy pen tool, and we're gonna cut out just kind of a shape out of this kind of center nucleus area. Gonna change the transfer mode to add, and then turn up the opacity all the way, and hit F for feather, and just kind of feather out the edges. So we just want it to look like the center is just burning hot and bright. Excellent, so now that we have our galaxy created, let's hop back over to our original comp, and let's go to our project here, and we're gonna drop in our galaxy into the composition, and I'm going to change the transfer mode to screen, and we're gonna toggle the switch, make sure it is set to 3D, hit R for rotation, and now we can go in here and just kind of rotate it as we see fit, maybe about like, we'll say that right there. Hit S for scale and scale it up to where it kind of fills in most of the frame. Cool, so I'm gonna go in here to our effects and presets browser, type in glow, and I'm gonna drop a glow effect right on top of this galaxy. So you can see it's kind of generating some brightness right here in the center, and I'll just kind of turn up the radius here just so we have this kind of glowing core here in the middle. And let's go ahead and duplicate this galaxy, hit Command D, and I'm gonna scale this down and then also push it back in 3D space. So if you hit P for position, you can just push stuff back in 3D space. We can push it, in fact, I wanna push this back to 5,000 pixels. So this is about as far as the kind of foreground stars, and we can hit S for scale and just scale it down as we see fit, and then hit the W key for rotation and just kind of rotate it and just push it off back into the distance. Cool, about like that. Excellent, so let's go ahead and give this background a little more tenacity. So we'll hit Command Y to create a new solid, and we'll call this gradient. And this gradient can be 1920 by 1080. We'll hit OK. And let's go to our effects and presets browser and type in ramp. And we're gonna drop in the gradient ramp onto our gradient layer. And let's go ahead and drop this gradient layer below both of our galaxies here. So for the start of ramp, I'm going to set our position to right about here. And for the end of ramp position, I'm going to set it to below the galaxy. And the start color, we're going to set to kind of a middle of the road desaturated blue. And for the end color, we're gonna set it to a middle of the road kind of desaturated red. And now we can change our transfer mode to add and hit T for opacity, and we're gonna drop the opacity to about 25%. So go ahead and select your gradient layer, select your pen tool, and we're just gonna cut out just kind of an elongated shape, about like this, about like that. hit F for feather, and just feather out the edges. And then we can even go in here and change the expansion so that it kind of stretches a little bit beyond the galaxy itself. About like that. You can see this just adds in a little more color tenacity to the background. Sweet, so we are on the home stretch here. Let's create the flares now. So hit Command Y to create a new solid. We'll make these flares just kind of a bright desaturated yellow. We'll call this flare 1. Hit OK, and we'll hit T for opacity, just to see kind of what we're cutting out here. And we're gonna cut out just kind of an egg shape from the center here. We basically wanna make it look like the light is just kind of beaming up from the center. And I'm gonna change the transfer mode to add, hit T for opacity. We're gonna crank this up to, let's say about 30. Then hit F for feather and feather out the edges. So you can see it just kind of looks like there's kind of this tunnel of light coming from the center of the galaxy here. So go ahead and duplicate this flare 1 by hitting Command D, and we're going to kind of hyper focus this light here. So go ahead and make a little bit more of an elongated egg here. And we're gonna go to our feathering by hitting F, and we're gonna turn it down to where there's just kind of a brighter beam here in the center, and we can just kind of drag this up a little bit and hit T for opacity. We'll just change this to, let's say about 15%. About like that, that's looking cool. And let's duplicate this flare, and this third flare, we're gonna call this sharp flare. And let's go into our sharp flare here and hit F for feather. And we're going to not feather it out too terribly much, maybe just about 9 or 10 pixels. And we are going to now go in and hyper focus this flare. So we don't want the arms to be elongated. We want it to be pretty straight, about like this. About like this. And I'm going to deselect our mask visibility button here so we can just kind of see what's going on. As you can see, there's this kind of bright flare right here in the middle, and that's looking really cool. I'm gonna hit Command D to duplicate that flare and then drag the second one kind of over here, and then drag the third one over here. And in fact, I can go ahead and grab the edges here and just kind of scale it up, maybe rotate it a bit. Just wanted to make it look like almost like a spotlight coming right out of the center of the galaxy here. I think that's looking pretty cool. And let's add in a little more color into our scene. So I'm gonna hit Command Y, and we're gonna call this Gradient 2. And it doesn't matter the color, so we'll hit OK, and then go to your effects browser and drag over the gradient ramp effect. Now change your start of ramp to be the very center of the composition here, and we're gonna change the ramp shape to radial. And we can grab the second arm here and kind of scale it up a bit. And the start color, we're gonna set to kind of a middle of the road orange, about like that, hit OK. And the end color, we're gonna change to just kind of a deeper blue, about like that. And we can now go in and change the transfer mode to soft light. That'll just add in a little bit more color into our scene. You can kind of see the orange is a little bit more in the center and blues on the outside. And I'll hit T for opacity and drop this down to, we'll say about 50%, about like that. Cool, and as you can see, this kind of reduced the overall color saturation in our scene. Excellent, so before we go any further, I'm gonna set our flares to 3D, just so when we start animating the camera, they kind of stick to the center of the galaxy itself. So before we go any further, I can see that these stars in the background are like way too big. We want them to be much smaller. So go ahead and select your stars 2 layer down here, and I'm going to turn down the grid spacing. It's just another way that you can change the size. And so I turned it down to about 5. We'll do the same thing for the stars 1 in the background. We'll change the grid spacing to, we'll say like maybe like 2 or 3. We'll change it to 2. There we go. So it's much smaller now in the background, but now there's like a lot of stars. So you can actually change that by going in and turning up the scatter. So you can turn up the scatter to just a big number. That one's set to about 300. We can turn up the other scatter to a significant amount to where we kind of split the difference there. So now the focus is more the galaxy and not like a crazy starry background. I can also see that this galaxy is a little too saturated for me. So instead of going in and changing each layer by hand, I'm just gonna go to the effects and presets browser, type in tint and drop it onto our galaxy. And now we can just dial this in to, I'm gonna say about 40% is probably good. About like that, just so there's colors there, but they're not over the top. And then we can go to our gradient layer here because this is actually adding in quite a bit of color information, and I can turn up the opacity a little bit more to where we have just this kind of more natural color scheme here. About like that, cool. So this is looking awesome, and now it's time to animate it. So let's go to Layer, New Camera, and we'll do a 50mm camera. It can be called Camera 1, that's fine. And let's go to our transform properties here, and we're gonna set a keyframe for the position and then a keyframe for the Z rotation, scrub to the very end, and we're just gonna push in Z space here. And we'll go ahead and turn up the rotation just a bit, maybe about like that. And we can also change the position to where the galaxy just kind of spins here. And you'll notice that the stars in the background, they're kind of getting cut off here. So what you can do is go in and select both of the stars layer, hit S for scale, and just kind of turn up their scaling until they fill the whole frame. So now if you kind of scrub through here, you can see that the stars are always in the background. And another cool thing to animate would be the actual twirling of the galaxy. So as we are pushing in, the galaxy is kind of twirling in on itself. So to do that, I'm going to go to our effects and presets browser, type in, you guessed it, twirl, and drop it onto the galaxy layer. So I'm going to turn this up so we can kind of see what's going on. So as you can see, as we dial in the effect, it kind of twirls, and it twirls a little bit faster in the center compared to the edges, and that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to set a keyframe for the very beginning for 0%. Drag to the very end, and we can just up this to about, let's say like 20%. So now let's preview our final result. Sweet, so this is looking really, really cool. If you wanted to, you could go in and customize the colors. In fact, I think I may expand this gradient a little bit, just so it kind of reaches out a little bit further in the scene, and I'm gonna feather out the edges a little bit more, hit F. Kind of feather it out and drag it down. But there are really a million different ways that you could customize this scene for your specific project. And I really encourage you to make this project your own. You know, you could go in and maybe make a 2-armed spiral galaxy instead of this kind of more clustered one. Or, you know, you could even perhaps do some sort of cool like gas giant thing instead of a galaxy with the same technique. But altogether, this is a really, really fun way to create a space scene, and it really doesn't take that much time once you understand how to use the turbulent noise mixed with the twirl effect. All right, so I hope you found this tutorial to be helpful, or at least I hope you've had a good nap for the last half hour. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them my way. And of course, you can download the free project file by visiting my website over at vfx.city. This has been Caleb Ward. We'll see you next time.